A few more folks trickling in. All right, let's get started if we can. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this call to discuss funding allocations related to homelessness assistance that was included in the American Rescue Plan. My name is Megan Lynch, HUD Press Secretary. On this call, we will hear from Housing and Urban Development Secretary Marcia Fudge, Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont, and Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. We will begin with brief remarks from Secretary Fudge, Governor Lamont, and Mayor Bowser, and then we are happy to take a few of your questions. If you have a question, please feel free to use the raise your hand function on the Zoom screen. Your name and organization must be displayed for us to call on you today. And with that, without further ado, we will start it off with Secretary Fudge.
Thank you very much, Megan. And I want to especially thank Governor Lamont and Mayor Bowser for joining us today. And good afternoon to all of you, and thank you as well. The Biden-Harris administration has acted swiftly and aggressively since day one to help protect and support Americans during this COVID-19 pandemic. Today, I am pleased to share that the Department of Housing and Urban Development has allocated American Rescue Plan funds to those who have borne the brunt of this crisis, people experiencing or at risk of experiencing homelessness. $5 billion in homelessness assistance has been allocated to 651 grantees, including states, tribal areas, and local governments, to help communities increase affordable housing and supportive services for people experiencing homelessness. Governor Lamont and Mayor Bowser will discuss more about what these funds mean for their communities. But let me just say this. On a single night in January 2020, more than 580,000 people experienced homeless in the United States. We know that the pandemic has only made the crisis worse. So while Americans are told to stay safe by staying home last year, more than 500,000 individuals and families had no way to do so because they had no place to call home. With this robust funding, along with additional emergency rental vouchers, communities across the country will have the resources needed to give homes to people who have had to endure the COVID-19 pandemic without one. As we talk about the homelessness assistance in the rescue plan, it is important to note that this funding is reflective of the administration's commitment to addressing homelessness as a priority. Just last week, the president released his fiscal 2022 discretionary funding request, which provides $3.5 billion in homeless assistance grants to complement the resources in the American Rescue Plan. Additionally, while the $5 billion in homeless assistance in the American Rescue Plan will deliver near-term relief to people experiencing or at risk of experiencing homelessness during this pandemic, President Biden's once-in-a-generation American Jobs Plan would build on this relief with additional robust funding for the affordable housing needed to bring the United States closer to ending homelessness and housing instability. The COVID-19 pandemic has underscored just how important it is for every person to have access to safe and stable housing. HUD is committed to ongoing collaborative partnerships with our communities to make this a reality. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Governor Lamont. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Secretary Fudge. First of all, I want you to know my dad worked at HUD 50 years ago, so it's nice being back. And Mayor Bowser, good to see you. I was born in Washington, D.C. Someday we'll maybe call you Governor Bowser.
Thank you.
Let me just say, Secretary Fudge, how important this funding was. I'll pick up where you left off. 8 months ago, 10 months ago, we were saying, stay safe, stay home. That was a mantra. That was the quarantine. It was so important. That was so true for the public health of our greater community. And as you just said so well, we had thousands of our fellow citizens didn't have a home that they could call home. And it was at that point that we realized how urgent it was to make sure the homeless always had a place that they could call home. And, we had a lot of people in homeless shelters. They were crowded in there. We had to decompress. We had to take down the population there by 50%. We had to go take over a number of the hotels we had here in the state, hotels that were empty at that point, make sure folks had a place that they could call home. Home was more than just a roof overhead to keep you dry in a rainstorm or warm in a cold day. Home was also had to have the wraparound services for people who needed it, the healthcare support they needed, testing and now vaccinations and mental health supports to make sure each of these folks get a chance to get back on their feet. And we couldn't do it without the $58 million that the state of Connecticut is getting. I'm glad we're one of your 631 grantees. We appreciate that. I want you to know this is work that's going to make a difference for our homeless in a big way now, and I think in the future. I think it's going to be transformative. It's going to change the way we work with the homeless. Make sure, remember, we're all God's children. Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you. Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Secretary, and thank you, Governor, for those remarks. And I want to add to them. Secretary, please share our appreciation to the President for the American Rescue Plan, which is making a critical difference for us already. It is a down payment. We're looking forward to the jobs plan as well that will help us recover and recover equitably from this pandemic. We know that the impacts of this pandemic have been uneven and we have seen that people who were already in vulnerable positions are even more vulnerable because of the pandemic. This American Rescue Plan provides $19 million in home funds for DC, which is 4 times what we normally get. And the American Rescue Plan provides over $350 million in housing assistance. I announced yesterday a program using these funds to provide rental assistance, home ownership assistance, emergency rental vouchers, and utility assistance. DC residents are going to staydc.com to access all of those funds in one easy to use portal. It's been up for about 36 hours and already 2,200 DC residents have started their applications. We have been very focused on ending homelessness in DC using our program called Homeward DC. Our commitment is to making homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. And we have had success in the last 6 years in reducing homelessness by 11% and significantly reducing family homelessness by 85%. We know, however, that the pandemic is putting at risk those gains because of the economic crisis that it has caused. So we look forward to investing the additional home dollars. It will allow us to acquire distressed properties and turn them into homes for residents who are in our homeless services system. We will also focus on how we can use funds to acquire recently shuttered hotels and convert them into permanent supportive housing, which is a needed part of how we solve homelessness on our continuum of services. Finally, Madam Secretary, I recently chaired the National League of Cities Housing Task Force, a bipartisan group of mayors from both big cities and small towns. And we were all just yearning for federal leadership and federal investments to stabilize and create new housing units. So I want to thank the Biden-Harris administration and you, Madam Secretary, for putting these issues at the forefront.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser, and thank you to Secretary Fudge and Governor Lamont. We will now turn it over to a few questions from the folks who are joining us this afternoon. As a reminder, please use the raise your hand function if you would like to ask a question this afternoon. I want to take, while we wait for questions to come in, I do want to take an opportunity to bring in Dr. Richard Cho, who is HUD Senior Advisor for Housing. Richard will be another resource for us as we take questions today. So to ask a question, once again, please use the raise your hand function on Zoom. And if we don't get to your question or you have questions following our call, feel free to reach out to us at HUD, at HUD Press Office at HUD.gov. Don't be shy with your questions, ladies and gents. We'll wait for folks to come in.
I know that there were questions that were submitted to us in writing by people on the call. Feel free to ask them. You don't wait for me to do it. If you're on the call, which I know you are, go ahead and ask your question. All right, now, this is your last opportunity.
Hi, Mike Casey here with Associated. I'll step in, I figure, in the silence. I heard the suggestion of turning shuttered hotels into homeless, maybe homeless facilities in DC. I mean, is there, maybe you could talk about that nationally? I know that there has, around the country, that's been an avenue in California and even in New York during the pandemic. Is there talk of a larger plan, considering, hotels' vacancy levels, to do this on a larger scale?
Well, Mike, I would say two things. One is that the home money is really very flexible. And so we're leaving it up to, DC with the mayor and in Connecticut with the governor to determine what works best for their communities. And that is why it's flexible. We can use it for rental assistance, to build new properties, to retrofit old properties, and to do things like buy hotels. So I would rather that the mayor and the governor take a crack at that question, because every single situation is a little different.
Thank you, Secretary. Let me just be clear. We want to use the home funds to build housing, and permanent supportive housing is part of what we need in our system so people can exit the homeless services system into supported housing. So that's what we're looking at.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Michael,
Mike.
we're doing the same. We were in a pinch, obviously, 9 months ago. We had to find decompressed housing immediately for all of our population, in this case, the homeless population. We had a lot of hotels, especially those that are business oriented, that were sitting empty. So we moved fast. And as Mayor Bowser said, now the trick is to transition people to permanent housing, and that's our big emphasis now.
Thanks, Mike. And let's go to Hugh McQuaid from Connecticut News Junkie next. I'll ask you to unmute Hugh.
Thank you. Governor, I believe I heard you say Connecticut was getting 58 million. Is that the case? And how do you imagine it might be spent? Is this the kind of thing that's going to have to go through the legislature's appropriations committee? Yeah,
that's Hugh. What we've got is this specific money that's specific for HUD-related activities, in particular the homeless. We're going to tell the legislature exactly what we're doing there, starting by retrofitting the hotels, like I suggested before, and moving from there, looking for more permanent housing solutions. We'll be doing that in collaboration with the legislature, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Hugh. Next, we'll go to Andrew Giambr, and I hope I'm saying your last name right, from DC. Hi, Andrew.
Close enough. How's it going? Thanks so much all for setting up this call. I'm actually based in New York, but I'm really interested to hear about these housing investments. I have a couple questions. The first is for the mayor and the governor. Can you give us a sense of how many units you expect the home funds to actually turn into in housing? Mayor Bowser, you said 19 million in home funds. Governor Lamont, you said about 58 million. So what does that look like in terms of numbers of apartments or units? And then the second question is for the secretary. I've read that the American Rescue Plan also includes a different $5 billion allotment for emergency housing vouchers. So could you speak to, in HUD's view, how many housing vouchers total would that fund? Would those be time limited since they're emergency vouchers? I'd like more details on that piece of it.
Well, let me just start first because I can give you the number. I know that it's more difficult for the mayors to give you actual numbers because they're still developing their plans as is the governor to where they're going to build, et cetera. So it takes some upfront planning, but I could say to you that we're looking at between 50,000 and 70,000 additional vouchers with this $5 billion that we're set aside solely for homeless.
I think you're right on that, Secretary. For us, we are still exploring how we're going to make investments. I will turn your attention, however, to two of our recent home projects where we use PSH, and that's the John and Jill Conway residence, also known as North Capitol Commons, where we built 124 units of mixed income housing, including 60 permanent supportive housing units in Abrams Hall at the former Walter Reed campus, where we have 54 units of permanent supportive housing.
I'll just add that we purchased one hotel, looking at some others. We got to figure out, Andrew, exactly to what degree they've got to be retrofitted. And Secretary Fudge, let me just say how important that the non-eviction and the funding support you've got to make sure that our homeless population is going down in the last 9 months. We're allowing those who otherwise might be at risk to stay in their homes. And that extra funding, working with the tenant as well as the landlord to make sure that they have a way to get back on their feet and stay with a roof over their head. That's much appreciated.
Well, thank you, Governor, for mentioning that, because between the COVID package that was passed in December and the rescue plan, there's about $45 billion in resources to pay back rents, to help with mortgage. And so I think you're right. I mean, we have really averted a real calamity by assisting people to stay in their homes so that the homeless problem doesn't get any worse. Next question.
And can I just ask a follow-up about the emergency vouchers? Are those time limited, Secretary Fudge? Like, how do those work for the people who would use them?
I'm going to turn that over to Richard. Richard, would you speak to that, please?
Absolutely, ma'am. So they are time limited in the sense that they were provided through a special appropriation rather than just add to HUD's tenant-based rental assistance baseline. These $5 billion were provided as a one-time lump sum. So you can think of the 50 to 70,000 vouchers that Secretary Fudge mentioned as having a shelf life of about 10 years. And so we will be awarding those shortly, and we'll have the funding to provide 10 years worth of vouchers. And Secretary Fudge, feel free to jump in here. I know it is a priority of this administration to try to scale rental assistance for all. And so they currently have a shelf life of 10 years, but our goal is to try to make sure that there's enough housing choice vouchers for every household that qualifies.
Thanks, Andrew. Let's next go to Ali Schweitzer from WAMU DC. Ali?
Hi there. My question is for Mayor Bowser. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
All right. So, Mayor, first of all, you said earlier how many people have applied for the stay funds. Could you confirm that number for me? I just want you to repeat it so I make sure I get it right.
We can certainly shoot you an email, so it's absolutely right. If you wait a minute, I'll pull it up again.
What's the number she asked me?
The number is 2,239 have started.
Thank you. And to remind me, can landlords directly apply for those federal funds?
The landlord and the tenant need to apply.
So they need to work together to apply. Okay. And finally, I've been hearing, of course, from a number of small landlords who are very eager to wind down the eviction moratorium in the district. I'm curious what your position is on that. Months and months into this crisis, would you support any gradual winding down of the eviction moratorium ahead of the ending of the state of emergency?
I was encouraged that the council accepted from the moratorium cases where public safety is at issue. I recognized also that there's kind of nationally a end to the moratorium on June 30th. That's why we've been so focused on moving these funds, these federal funds, out to people that will provide 15 months of rental assistance, 12 months looking back and 3 months looking forward. So anyone who hasn't been able to pay their rent because they've been affected by COVID needs to go to state.dc.gov and apply for that rental assistance.
And let me just also say that nationally, of this $45 billion that is sitting in these two funds from COVID, from the COVID package and from the rescue plan, more than half of it is set aside solely for rental assistance. So we wanted to be sure that these landlords, especially the smaller landlords, would be able to get their back rent and we would bring tenants current. So the majority of that money is going to landlords. So I just want to make clear, people think that we've ignored the small landlords, but in fact, we have not. We have made sure that we provided the resources to get them current.
Thanks, Allie. We're going to take one more question here, and it looks like we had a question in the chat from Adam. The question is, will the money allow for vouchers to be paid for over a number of years, or are they only short-term vouchers?
Go ahead, Richard.
Sure. So those vouchers will be awarded, we'll be announcing the allocations in a couple of weeks. Those vouchers will be all awarded at once, so housing authorities will receive them all, and then we're working to ensure that they have the ability to utilize them quickly. In other words, we want to see housing authorities work with homeless service organizations to bring as many people from the streets into homes in the near term as possible. So we don't want them spread over the next 10 years. Currently, the funding is available to enable the vouchers to be funded for 10 years. So anybody housed over the next 12 to 18 months will have vouchers available up to 10 years. And then again, the future of those vouchers will be something that the administration will be continuing to work with to see if we can make them permanent, as well as to scale rental assistance for all. Please.
No, go ahead, Richard.
I just said the communities, and they will not be structuring these as short-term, time-limited rental systems. There will not be like a cutoff for the household.
But let me just say this: what I don't want you to expect is that we're going to send these resources out and they're going to be spent in a few weeks or in a few months. In order to do this in a very strategic way, and in order to make sure that we are providing the best possible service for the people we serve, it is going to take some planning. You cannot build new housing overnight. And so don't expect that mayors and governors are going to show immediately what is going to happen. This is an awful lot of money coming in a very short period of time. So let's make sure that we are strategic about how we use it.
All right, thank you, everyone. We are going to wrap up our questions there and let everyone get back to their Wednesday. Are there any closing comments from our speakers today? I think we're good. Okay, so thanks everybody for joining us. As a final reminder, for any follow-up questions, you can feel free to contact us at HUD press office at hud.gov. Thank you and have a nice afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you both.
Thank you.